Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Noer Yudarris. Today we'll be going through behavioral science's own sensation and perception. We'll be speaking about the sensation and perception anatomy and how signals get to the brain. Plus, we'll be speaking about other theories as well, the influence of sensation and perception. This is your host Mahmoud Noor. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and let me know what topics you want me to cover in the next upcoming videos. So we're going to start with distal stimuli. So distal stimuli means that physical objects can produce photons. These are objects outside of the body, whether light reflects on them and they produce photons, but that's how you can see stimuli from far away or from close by. Next, you have nociceptors. Nociceptors are receptors that respond to changes in pain, and these are different from olfactory receptors. Olfactory receptors are special to smell. So olfactory receptors are specialized cells for smell. Next, you have absolute threshold of sensation. So that's the minimum stimulus to detect a particular stimulus through sensory system. So it's basically the minimum kind of perception or a minimum kind of stimulus that triggers the sensory system. Next, you have the threshold of conscious perception. So a threshold of conscious perception is basically the minimum level of stimulus that is required to elicit a conscious perception or awareness of the stimulus. That means that when you notice a stimulus and you respond to it, the info in the brain does not cross at a certain threshold called subliminal perception. I want you to take an example, for instance. So let's say you're in a quiet room and you hear a subtle like sound that triggers your a kind of threshold of perception. But what if you're in a noisy party or a room with a noisy background and you can't hear that subtle sound anymore because there is a background noise that is covering that sound. Next, you have difference threshold, and that has to do with Weber's law. It happens between two stimuli, and happens when there's a minimum change in magnitude to perceive two different weights or two different sizes. And like I said, it's associated with Weber's law. So an example here, you have 21-pound weight and you replace it with a 21.05. Most people won't notice the difference, but what if you then add a 21.3, at maybe almost 250 grams or more of weight, and then you notice just noticeable difference, right? So it's delta of the difference. So that's 21.3 minus 21 divided by the weight of the original. So the original weight, and that's for instance 1.5% difference. It is also noticeable here for the Kit Kat. So you see how there is just a noticeable difference in size as well. So that applies in real life as well. Next, you have signal detection theory, which studies the psychological and environmental factors that influence perception and sensation. So, signal detection theory consists of trials. Noise trials is when signal is present, and catch trial when the signal is not present. So, hit is basically right answer and you have perception. Miss is when the subject fails to perceive or have no perception. And then you have false alarm, is that things the signal was perceived but it wasn't there. And then you have the correct negative or correct rejection. There is no signal received. Your brain processes, there's no signal. All right, and then here the false alarm, you think the signal was perceived, your mind thinks that, but it wasn't actually there. So duplicity theory of vision states that the retina has 120 million cones for color vision and rods for black and white, and it uses a pigment called rhodopsin. So Rods and cones are specialized neurons that connect through bipolar cell synapse, and then the bipolar cell synapse connect with the ganglion cell, and that's how we receive photons through rods and cones. So the way it's processed is through basically two important cells, horizontal and amacrine cell. So it starts by input from retinal cell, they get the light, and then that goes to the ganglion, and then the ganglion uses the amacrine to transport these photons to the bipolar synapse, and the bipolar synapse uses horizontal cells to transfer to the cones and the rods. Next, the brain has is an ability called parallel processing. So the parallel processing is the brain's ability to analyze information regarding color, motion, depth, form, etc., etc. And then when it analyzes this, it makes connections to create an image, and it creates a cohesive, which means a clear differentiation of an image. So for instance, you look at a picture of a cat, and then you're able to analyze it has ears, it has whisks, it has eyes, what color is the cat, what shape is the cat, is the cat fat, is the cat thin, etc., etc. And then you have a vestibular sense, which is responsible for the movement, gravity, and balance, and that's basically in the ear. The incus, malleus, and stapes are three of the smallest bones in the body that transmit vibrations, and they help in the perceiveness or perception of auditory perception. So it starts by the malleus acting on the incus, and the incus acts on the stapes, which is connected to the cochlea. Kind of how to memorize this. I feel like Coachella is close to Coachella, which is a music fest, and music is related to kind of like temporal lobe and the sound. So that's how I kind of connect everything together. Coachella is receptors for hearing. So Coachella, Coachella, music. That's how I kind of make the connection. Next, you have vestibule, which is used for balancing and determining orientation. So vestibule in your ear, it's what helps you balance. So the way auditory pathway processes is the sound processes through and passes through vestibular cochlear to the brainstem, and then from the brainstem it goes to MGN, which is a medial geniculate nucleus of the thalamus, and that's how it processes sound, vestibular cochlear to brainstem to MGN of the thalamus to analyze it. Then you have somatosensorial four modalities for the touch, pain, temperature, pressure, and vibrations. You have five here. You have the panicin corpusculus, which responds to deep pressure and vibration. Next, you have the Meissner corpusculus, which responds to light touch. And then you have the Merkel cells, which respond to deep pressure and texture. And then you have the Ruffini endings, which respond to stretch. And you have the free nerve endings, which respond to pain and temperature. So, deep pressure has to panicin and Merkel. A vibration is also panicin. Light touch is Mesnier. Ruffini ending is for stretch. Free nerve ending is for pain and temperature. Next, we have transduction. Transduction is basically the conversion of sensory stimuli from the environment into neural signals. So transduction is basically you, I don't know, receive you see a distal stimuli, and then that's a sensory stimuli. Okay, that's visual. Maybe you hear a conversation or listen to a song. That's a sensory stimuli from the environment, and then it transforms it into a sensory signal. So that happens is transduction receptors, central nervous system, and then the somatosensory cortex in the parietal lobe. Next, you have the gate theory of pain. The gate theory of pain is basically able to forward signals from other touch modalities, such as temperature, to the brain, thus reducing the pain feelings. So, you remember how we mentioned in the previous one that the free nerve endings that's responsible for pain. So it forwards signals from this touch modality to the brain, thus reducing pain sensation. It kind of prevents pain sensation from traveling to the central nervous system, kind of decreasing the pain in some sort or suppressing it. Next, you have bottom-up processing and top-down. I covered this in a previous video, but let's just go through them real quick. Bottom-up processing is basically you have a detailed idea or detailed example of something, and then you kind of process it into a general statement. Let's say we say that uh, black pens, for instance, have a bad ink quality. All right, and then you process that into a general statement that all black pens are bad. Okay, and then you have top down. Top down is a general statement to a specific example. So top down is like you say um, dogs are cute, for instance. Okay, and then you say, oh, I think Labradors are um, are nice dogs or cute dogs. So the end detailed kind of conclusion is that Labradors are cute, something like that. Next and lastly, you have Gestalt principles, and these are basically ways the brain can infer missing part of a picture when it's missing. So based on previous experiences and other factors, the brain uses Gestalt principles to fill in parts of a missing picture. So first off, we got the law of proximity. So it's basically elements that are close to one another are perceived as a unit. So let's say you have a row of letters, and when the letters are close together, they make a word or they make a sentence. Next, we have the law of similarity. An example of this principle is a group of blocks. So objects that appear similar are grouped together. So let's say you have a group of blocks, they're different colors or like same color or same shape. They belong to a certain group. So we have red blocks, same group. Yellow blocks, same group. Next, you have the law of good continuation. So elements that appear to follow the same pathway are grouped together. So, for instance, you have a wavy line that's broken up into a segment. So you have a wavy line broken up into a segment, but then uh, it follows kind of like we perceive the line as continuous despite the interruption. We kind of fill in the information that although it's broken up, but still we see it as a continuation. Then law of closure. When space is enclosed by a group of lines, it's perceived as complete or close to the line. Let's say you have a um, I don't know, like a missing triangle, like a side of the triangle is missing. What are you gonna do? You're gonna fill it in, all right, to complete the triangle, and that's basically law of closure. Next, you have law of pragnas or symmetry. Perceptual organization will always be simple, regular, and symmetric as possible. So that really kind of reference to the fact that maybe you have one side of a thing and then you're able to complete it or perceive the other side using symmetry. So for instance, you have a butterfly. Okay, so you can use symmetry. You're like, oh yeah, so that's a butterfly. Okay, in order to perceive the other side using my brain, oh, that's probably the other side of the butterfly. Okay. And then lastly, you have the law of figure ground, which is distinction between object and background. So an example of this is a silhouette of a person against a bright background will perceive the person as the figure and a background as the ground. And that's it. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Please do share the video and leave any comments. And if you want me to cover a certain topic, let me know. And have a blessed day.